I don't think anyone could have followed that.
I agree. I'll
Well,
go
that
ahead and
gives
stop
everybody a chance to
sharing.
get some questions going. So Gary Beamy, all right.
I'll stop sharing my screen for you to share yours, Gary.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, again, thank you guys for being here. And I know many of you are stressed about any number of things. And what I'm saying is class of 2021, we're going to try and make this fun. We're going to see if we can go from stress to success. To help you with that process, it takes two things to go from stress to success. Ask questions, follow directions. Sounds so easy. Whenever I do this presentation and I say ask questions, well, I can remember a mom once, her hand shot up like a rocket and said, "What are the questions?" I said, "Whoa, slow the roll." It's not what you ask, but who you ask. Start, students, families, by connecting with the admission counselors. Every college has an admissions office. All the admission counselors today, look, we work for the Office of Admissions. We don't work for the Office of Rejection. Admitted to college. Your job's to ask questions, follow directions. Admission counselors, the whole reason that we exist is to help students and families get admitted to college. We are regional. Every one of us works in your area for you. If you want to know about any of the colleges that you've already met, you can connect with us. We're your admission counselor. We're all part of a group called Arrow. And Arrow is a group of regional admission counselors. We're all professionals. We work for our colleges. We know specifically everything that you need to know about getting admitted, scholarship, financial aid for our colleges. You can connect not just with us, but other admission counselors at this website. And today, we're going to take your questions because students, it's not a matter of if or when, but where. By this time next year, seniors, I hope there's a vaccine. I've got scientific hope that you're sitting in a classroom. Look, you cannot wait for your senior year to be done and being a freshman. Well, we're here to help that process. Thank you guys so much for being here. Now, let's get on to the questions.
Awesome, thank you. It looks like we've got already 8 or so. Thank you all. Feel free to keep adding those in the Q&A. So the first question, what are some of the best ways to stand out to admission counselors? Manny, I think you want to tackle that one first.
Yeah, I definitely think this is one that all of us could provide tons of responses to. I think one of the best ways that I enjoy and appreciate students wanting to stand out to admissions advisors is really kind of what Gary already mentioned, right? Asking those questions and following directions. And a big part of it is being vocal about it. We are here to serve you, but we can't serve you if we don't know you exist, right? So a big part of it sometimes is students not reaching out to us or being willing to take that step to connect with the admissions advisor from their institution. And if you're unsure, if you aren't aware of the fact that, I wasn't aware of this in high school, that schools have regional admissions advisors in my area, who I should contact. Contacting your main admissions office or the main admissions line or email is the quickest way, easiest way to really get connected to the folks you need to get connected to. But then on that point, it's how willing are you to put in the work for your future, right? So for me, I'm like, the students that I really appreciate or that I'm willing to kind of go that extra mile for are the ones that are going the extra mile for their own admissions process. They're the ones that are connecting with me when it comes to their documents being sent in, asking those questions about our application process, following up, right? It's one of those things, kind of like a job. Once you've applied, you don't just wait for someone to respond to you. You will like to follow up. You like to reach out to the folks that interviewed you. It's kind of a similar thing when it comes to an admissions process for college. So be connected with us, be open and willing to share where you're at, and then, from there we can make sure to get you in.
Gary, do you want to add something?
Every admission counselor has a preferred method of connecting with us. For many of us, we've all got mobile phones. That's great. You can text us. If you do that, make sure you tell us who you are. Because right now, if you're 805-555-1010, I'd rather know that it's Zach Street calling me or texting me or whoever you are. Email, certainly reach out to us via email, give us time. We are working 24/7 this fall to try and help students get to college. So just connect with us any way that you want. We will get back to you as quickly as possible.
Would anyone else like to add to that question before we move on?
I'll add one more thing. If a college offers interviews, definitely do them. That's a great way to stand out and show your interest, especially in the more selective colleges where they're making very, finely tuned decisions. The ability to spend that time with the counselor, maybe the one reading your application, and getting to know them in person and communicating what you love about the school and why you're a good fit for the school can go a really long way. It really personalizes the application when the admissions counselor can recall a meeting either on Zoom or in person, as opposed to
Great. Erin, did you want to add anything?
I think they covered it pretty well, but I guess like if you have a lower GPA or anything, that's where it's really going to help you when making our decision. If you have a lower GPA and we know nothing about you, we've never spoken to you before, you might not get the acceptance letter you're hoping for. So if you reach out to us, build that relationship, it'll definitely help you in the long run.
Go ahead.
Yeah, students, remember, we don't admit numbers, we admit people. We're people, you're people. Make that connection. We're here to work for you. I know you can go to the website and get some information, but follow up, because not every website's always 100% true and accurate. We are updating policies by the minute right now. So reach out to the admission counselors, please.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, especially right now. I think, like everyone mentioned, we all have new policies as of this year, it seems like. So great. Well, we'll move on to the next question. What is the difference between a regular program and an honors program? I can tackle that one. And then if anyone wants to add, please do. So there's a few different honors options oftentimes that you'll find. So there's an honors program, like you mentioned, which can be, just some additional classes or a cohort that you're a part of. There are honors colleges. So like I talked about earlier at ASU specifically, we have Barrett, the Honors College. So that's a full residential experience, advising clubs, specific faculty just for that academic college within the honors college at ASU. So those are kind of the main differences, but oftentimes the honors college is really just a component of your larger experience. So it's not like you're going to a different college. In our case, you're still very much first and foremost an ASU student. You're just also happen to be a part of the honors college. And typically you're replacing coursework. So you're often not adding anything on. You're maybe just opting for some more challenging courses or, diving a bit deeper into your major. Most programs offer some sort of thesis or capstone that is required. But in general, they coexist very well. So you can typically find a major you really like and then either an honors college or program that you can stack on top of that or beside that to really flesh out your experience if you're someone that likes that additional challenge, or oftentimes just the opportunity to do additional research or internships. Would anyone like to add to that one on kind of the honors experience? Yeah, Gary.
So the University of New Mexico also has an honors college. Students, honors college typically are smaller classes and they're very dynamic. I've never had a student in all my career of being an admission counselor say, hey, Gary B, can I get 4 years of lecture? No. You want to be part of the discussion in that honors college. You know your classmates. It's 12, 14, 15 students. And guess what? You also get to know the professor very well. And as you head towards grad school, perhaps you need that letter of recommendation and it comes from a professor. And if you like that professor, you can take several classes through that professor. And it's a great opportunity to get to know yourself and how you express yourself, because as you grow, you'll know that, hey, people want to know about you, and that's a great way to learn. Honors College, fabulous programs.
Yeah, and like Brittany and Gary mentioned, it will vary from school to school too. So definitely check with the schools you're looking at to see what their honors programs look like, because it'll vary. There's oftentimes a lot of good scholarship opportunities through the Honors College as well, so that's something to consider. But overall, you're taking those same courses that everyone else is taking, but at a more rigorous level.
Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question here, just to make sure we can get through all these. You guys are asking some great questions. Zach, I think you wanted to take the next one.
Sure, thanks, Brittany. This question is about being interested in a university for a long time and how to sort of express that interest and what to say to communicate that to the college or university. Speaking from a liberal arts college experience where we have a holistic review process, the first is to be as specific as possible in your application process. So if there's an essay opportunity or a supplemental question where you can talk about the college and how you became interested in it, why you feel like it's the best fit for you, because the reality is colleges are looking for students who are going to be happy and successful and match what the college offers. So if you see that already and you can show that to us, then that's going to help convince us that you're the right student for our campus. A couple ways to do that. Again, one is putting some of that language clearly in your application. And suggestions would be if there's an academic program, an athletic team, a social club, something about the area, whatever it may be that really draws you to the campus, that shows the place and that your interest is well researched. The other suggestion would be, like I said in the first question, to do an interview. That shows a level of commitment and interest. And also, if the university or college offers an early application program, such as early decision or early action, those are always a great idea. Always talk through those options with your admissions counselor or your college counselor at your high school. But generally, it's a good idea to apply early if you know you want to go somewhere, because that shows your interest and your commitment. And honestly, typically gives you a leg up in the admissions process, especially at the more selective schools where they're making sort of the toughest decisions. That demonstrated interest is what we call it. Demonstrated interest can be a plus in that process.
Yeah, Manny, you want to add something?
Yeah, I noticed that the student kind of made it a three-parter. So I wanted just to add to that last little bit that they asked about how they should maybe make their essay stand out. I think oftentimes, having been someone that's reviewed some scholarship essays, and we don't have our application essay anymore, but having seen those, it really is, following the prompt, speaking about yourself, and the things that Zach mentioned, I think is key, is being upfront and passionate about why you see yourself at that school, right? A big part of it for us is we're selling the experience of our institutions to you. And if you can already see yourself at our institution, or the ways that you can use the education that you're going to be receiving from our institutions and applying it maybe back home or in different future endeavors, that's something that we see students as being forward thinking. And I think that benefits a lot of students. If you don't feel that way, or you're like, I'm still undecided, I don't know, that's not a bad thing. I think it's okay to be open about where you're at in your education process, your journey. But being authentic, I think, speaks pretty loudly when it comes to the different essays that schools read. A lot of schools don't have too many essays. Some schools still do. So I think following that prompt, being authentic, and really kind of trying to say, well, I want to know how I'm going to apply all this learning, all this experience having that I'm going to have while I'm here 4, 5, 6 years right at this institution, and what that's going to do to my life and what I'm going to shape. So I think tweaking it with those types of things usually makes essays stand out. So I just wanted to add that part.
Great, thank you. Looks like, Gary, you have a specific program question for UNM. Oh, you're on mute.
Me.
There we go.
So yeah, if you've got specifics, yes, New Mexico has animation, illustration. Reach out to me directly and we'll cover that. But I don't want to, I know probably other schools here have that. One of the questions that came up is that, hey, I've been admitted to several colleges. How do I decide which one? And I always call it the fit, finding it. There's an academic fit, there's a social fit, and a financial fit. Academic, two-way street. You know, you're asking, do we have this major? Yes. Now, are you prepared for that major? That's where we get to know you and get you admitted. Social fit, clubs, organizations, students, you're only in class this much time and you've got this much. So we want you to come and experience the locale. And then that financial fit. It's so important. I graduated from college debt-free, and it was just a perfect, I've never had a student loan. Everybody's different, and I know it costs a lot today, but talk with the admission counselors and talk to the four that, Manny, you also wanted to dovetail into that.
Yeah, I think we often find that students, you know, I was not that student that applied to multiple schools. I only applied to one because it was kind of my go-to school. And now working as an admissions advisor, I definitely wish I would have pushed to apply to more schools. It's interesting because, like I was saying before, like we're kind of selling you on our institution. So you have to be a smart consumer and really decide and put kind of pen to paper and be like, all right, what will XYZ school provide to me that ABC school won't, right? And just because at face value, both schools seems awesome or they could be a good fit, like Gary mentioned, you want to find the right fit in different areas. So I think it's helpful to talk to current or former students and visitor centers at those institutions, your admissions counselors, they definitely can connect you with those groups. Speaking with admissions advisors, right, kind of working with your different support groups, whether that be your parents, high school counselors or teachers, coaches, what have you. I think it's important just to kind of put down ways of how you want to grade your schools. Like at Eastern, we use a acronym called VOCAL, which is value, opportunity, community, academics, and location, to specify how we kind of separate ourselves or what sets us apart. And that's not for everyone, or like not all students are going to look at the different things in those areas and say, oh, like that's what works for me. And that's okay. We don't work for everyone, and there isn't one institution that works for everyone. But the important thing is for you to be a smart consumer and find ways that you're going to say, this is what's going to work for me.
Okay, awesome. Looks like our next question was about providing a sample activity sheet. I don't think anyone just has that ready to go, but we're going to post our contact information at the end, and I'm sure someone would be able to provide something like that. And I think in general, to the second component, do I put the dates that you started, like you've been playing tennis since 4th grade? I think you can definitely indicate that, you know, I've been doing this for, I think that really shows passion and excitement about something if you've been doing it for a long time. Generally, I would just include items that truly represent you and reflect you. You don't need to add things just because you went to one club meeting one time, if that doesn't really reflect your passions. I don't know if anyone else has any other insight they want to add on the activities list that they'd recommend or maybe recommend to avoid.
I always say, students, we're not looking for breadth. We don't want to see you in 10 or 15 clubs. We'd like to see that you were active. If you were in the tennis and got to be the captain of the team, something like that, or you were in student government and you were vice president, president. So we're looking for that leadership quality as well. Everybody wants that.
Thank you. And then, Manny, you want to talk about accreditation, what that means?
Sorry, I'm operating with 2 screens, so like getting the mouse lost in certain places, I can't unmute myself. But yes, so I think you're asking maybe for the entire group of our institutions, right? And I could be wrong, but I believe all of us are accredited by some accreditation institution of some sort. Eastern is accredited by the Northwest Commission of College and Universities. And then individual programs are often accredited for the different entities that they represent. Like within our business school, we're accredited by AACCSB. And so there's ways that you can look into the different programs that you're interested in, as well as the institution, to see what their accreditations are.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think generally, specifically within Arrow, we're all accredited nonprofit institutions, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that's something important to look into, because oftentimes, especially if you're going to be transferring, if you're looking at a community college, maybe for your first 2 years, you want to make sure that that institution is accredited, so that the institution you ultimately transfer to will accept those credits. So that's a really good question and something to be aware of. Then we have a couple questions about test scores. Looks like, Manny, you want to tackle Suzanne's question, and then we can jump around to a few other test score questions. I know that's a hot topic right now too.
Yeah, definitely. I apologize. I started clicking on answer on a lot of these. I was just like, oh yes, I think with many of us who are now moving test optional, the big thing for us is you don't need to send your test scores, right? Like, regardless of where the score level is, I think the most important time that test scores or test optioning is important is for scholarships, particularly those locally for you if they ask for test scores, or for specific schools that might still be looking for test scores as a way of admitting students or providing scholarships. At Eastern, we do not need them. They aren't going to take any part in your admissions decision and or your scholarship decision. But I think that I also kind of say that with a grain of salt, where it's like, if you have taken it and you might have a reported middle 50th percentile, right, score, it usually doesn't hurt you for those schools that are test optional. It just also provides another layer of, like Zach mentioned, for the holistic review. It makes it so that we're able to see you in a different light, that maybe your GPA isn't the only thing that you can demonstrate academically. But I also don't want that to be a thing that going into this upcoming year, I know for a lot of us, we don't want students to worry about that, right? Now that we're going test optional, we don't want them to think that, how am I going to take the test? What's that going to look like? We really want to kind of reduce that stress, like Gary B was saying, and kind of remove that layer from you as well.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. I definitely agree with Manny that you do not need to send it if the school is test optional. But it is a great question, because that question wasn't always so easy or to answer clearly. A large part, very brief context here, for a long time, a lot of the most selective colleges, the toughest ones to get into, were not only using SAT and ACT as a measure of students' ability, but as a tool to position themselves against their peers. And so they really wanted to get that highest score. And if you send, even if they were test optional, if you send in something lower, then they had to include it, and they didn't want to drag down their profile with a lower score, just to be brutally honest. There's some of that going on at the upper echelons, or whatever you want to call it. But now suddenly, Conn College, Connecticut College, has been test optional for 12 years. We decided a long time ago we didn't want to play that game, which I'm proud of the college's decision there. But now with what we're dealing with, so many schools are moving to test optional, and due to a lot of pressure from organizations and institutions, rankings have lowered the impact of test scores in how they evaluate schools. So we're a lot freer to not worry about the score, both from an institutional as well as an academic perspective. So my very short advice on this is similar to what Manny said. If you see yourself as about average or above for the school's score, then probably a good idea to send them in. If not, don't do it. And here's what I worry about. I've seen students at different schools miss out on scholarships because they just automatically sent a score, but then that score got wrapped into their merit scholarship calculation and maybe disqualified them from a merit scholarship that their GPA would have earned. So it's not just about admission, it's about financial aid and scholarships. Schools will do it differently, but it's worth paying some attention to, and only sending in the scores if you're pretty confident they're going to help and that they're above average for the school you're looking at.
Aaron or Gary, did you want to add anything else?
Just briefly on test scores. Students, if you feel that 100% you must take that test, check with this colleges you're going to apply to and find out what is a good test score for us. We'll tell you that's a good test score. But we're, again, just like all of us right now, we're being very test flexible. we want you to come to school safely. Catching the COVID isn't worth taking the test.
I would agree with that. Let's see, what else do we have here? Someone asked for Aaron and Zach, aside from having smaller class sizes, what do you see as the biggest advantages of a smaller college? I think that's a good piece, and then maybe the rest of us can speak about, I know, some larger varying size institutions too, if you want to take that away.
Sure, I'll start. So in addition to the smaller class sizes, like I said, at SOU, you're not just a face in a 300-person lecture hall. The professor knows our student by name. They recognize them in passing. They're very open for office hours and have more time for those office hours as well. But knowing their students by name is just very beneficial, because then you have someone to be your letter of recommendation when you're graduating, and just building those relationships. They're there to help you with when you're looking for jobs after graduating as well. And in my experience, I went to a larger university and I did not have that relationship with any of my professors at all. Not saying it's not possible at a larger school as well, but that's just my experience with working at a small university. I've noticed that relationship that you're able to build with the professors. They actually care if you're in class. They notice if you're not in class, and they check in with you, make sure you're doing okay. If you need any extra assistance, if you're missing a lot or maybe dropping in grades or anything like that, they really care about their students.
Yeah, and I'll second that and say that access to faculty and relationship building is a big part of it, both for your ability to learn from them and gain their expertise, have coffee with them in the campus coffee shop. You know, some residential liberal arts colleges like Conn College, some faculty live on campus and you get to see them, have dinner with them, and just really be part of their life. And from an academic perspective and from a future outcomes, you know, getting references for medical school or whatever it may be, as Aaron said, that can be a big help. I think the easiest way to think about it is sometimes smaller schools will have smaller resources than a big, you know, Division I school. We don't have a particle accelerator for our physics students at Connecticut College, but the resources that are there are more available to you. So if there is a really good lab facility for biology research, there's less students competing for that space. An athletic team, there's less students competing for those spots. And airtime in a classroom, you know, there's less students competing to have that time. So while depending on the campus, there may be less of certain high cost things, there is a chance to really utilize the resources and get to know people. And that can be relationships are so important in life that can be more important in some cases than a high-tech facility.
Great, thank you both. I think those are all really great points. I think it also comes down to the student knowing yourself as an individual. Like I was mentioning earlier, our largest campus has 50,000 students. So for some students, they're like, absolutely not, I wouldn't touch that with, you know, a 100-foot pole. Other students are so psyched about it. They want the big Pac-12 experience. And like Zach said, you know, that oftentimes comes with additional research dollars and things like that. And I think you can find communities and, you know, your niche on campus wherever you choose to go. I think it's really going to come down to touring the campus or doing a virtual visit, you know, right now. And that kind of segues into our next question of how to actually get the feel of programs and campus life and all of these things when you may not necessarily be able to visit right now. I know for us specifically at ASU, we hold webinars, you know, similar to a format like this. Obviously, you're finding there's an overwhelming amount of resources becoming available, which I think is exciting, hopefully. And we're also going to start doing like one-on-one tours, you know, one tour. So in some ways, it's a benefit to you, you know, the small group and the intimate walking tours, you know, that you may find that weren't necessarily available before. But I'll let anyone else jump into how, you know, particularly in this time that we're all living in, how do you advise, why is the college search process different? How is it the same? How to maximize the resources that are available?
Yeah, I'll add to that one. And I apologize. I'm noticing that my video is lagging compared to what I'm saying. So hopefully it's making sense on the receiving end. But I think I dropped our virtual page in the chat for folks to check out, and I'm sure other institutions are doing similar things. I actually think that it's been kind of cool for some of our out-of-state students to get to see campus in a way that they wouldn't have normally seen it. While it's not on campus like we prefer, we have been working very diligently with programs, virtual tours like Brittany mentioned, virtual visits, one-on-ones with admissions advisors. There's a lot more available to you kind of at the palm of your hand, whether you're on a mobile device or on a laptop screen, to really still get to know and see what a campus is like. We get to do a lot of different things like fall preview days, open houses, and things like that when we were in person, and now we're finding ways to strategize on how to move those online while still providing a ton of the support. I say that knowing that, does that totally replace what it would be like to be at University of New Mexico or Southern Oregon University or Connecticut College or ASU or Eastern? No. But I think for the time that we have, time we're in, and the options that we have, it is still the best way to kind of get to know and get a feel for the college. I think one of the ways that we're trying to be very intentional with these visits and these tours and things like that is that we're trying to provide as much of a lens of what we have to offer while opening up to students, families, counselors, what have you, whoever wants to know. What are those questions, like kind of Gary had mentioned before, what are those questions that you want to get answered? What things should you be looking for? And how is that going to help you determine whether a college is the right fit for you? So definitely still take advantage of those options from our institutions. I know folks have been trying really hard, like our visitor center at our institution, they go above and beyond when it comes to our tours and visits, and I'm always very excited to be a part of them because students still leave feeling like they got a lot of their questions answered and like they got a good feel for our institution. So I'm sure the same can be said for the institutions that are participating with us.
Just to finish that, and maybe Aaron or Zach want to chip in as well, but we've got every university today has virtual tours, but your admission counselor can also connect you for departmental one-on-ones. We know faculty, so reach out to us, let us make that connection for you. We're happy to do that.
Definitely. Thank you for the insight into that. And then I know we had a few more questions related to COVID-19 and, what is changing in the process. Someone asked, is the bar lower this year? I'm not sure that's the case, but we all, I think, are trying to adapt our processes, like with going, being test optional or going test optional this year, right? And then we had another one here, let's see. Another good question about kind of the financial piece. What if you've had those financial changes, or if you apply early decision, but then something changes, right? We all know that can happen very quickly. So if anyone kind of wants to address what you really foresee being different this year, and if you have any additional questions surrounding, our current situation, feel free to throw those in. I know Zach mentioned, these are tough questions, but really important. So if anyone wants to jump in on anything related to that, please share your insights with the group.
Students, I highly recommend early October, do the FAFSA, because when your situation changes, we're going to financial aid, and the only way financial aid can do a review is if they already have your FAFSA. So get that done early October. You may not think that you're eligible for any need-based aid, but then your family situation changes. So today you're doing well, and we want that to be the case, but things change. Get the FAFSA done as early as possible. I always say apply early because you're in front of the line when we start dishing out scholarship, all right? So get in early, apply, get admitted, you'll be in line.
Does anyone want to add anything?
Nope. Yeah, I'll take a couple here. First, I want to second Gary's advice to apply regardless, well, apply for the FAFSA, get that done early, and I'll add, apply to any college you're interested in regardless of cost. Because, for example, at our college, it's a high cost, but we have endowment resources, and we use that to help students. So we meet 100% of needs. So if you need $60,000, then we can provide that. So don't let a price tag scare you away. That might mean you end up getting accepted to a school that can't fund you. If there's a school in that situation, then that can be disappointing. But go for what you want and don't rule anything out until you have the information in front of you so you can not miss out on an opportunity that might have been available. Regarding COVID, I wish there were easy answers here with schools closed and online learning and clubs and sports limited in many cases. The best advice I can give is to pursue your interests as deeply as you can. And in fact, doing that in creative ways might be a great way to show off a passion, determination, and creative problem solving to an admissions committee. That you were able to really engage in that, backpacking group, find ways to help make that more safe and accessible to you and your friends or your school. That might be a cool way to do it. But it's going to take some creativity. But I'll also add that I do think while the bar may not be lower, the context will be expanded. Colleges will be more thoughtful to individual situations and limitations, and they're not going to expect you to meet outcomes or have opportunities that were there a year or 2 or 3 ago and just aren't there this year. But I still think they're going to want to see initiative and commitment and passion in your interests. So pursue those. And then the last one that I'll just jump in while I'm going is there was a question about early decision and if your financial aid package changes. That's an important question. I can answer that for many liberal arts colleges, which most of them do early decision or offer early decision, most of them will allow an out, even if they don't publish it that way, if they don't meet your need or we can't come to an agreement with the family. We're not going to ask you to take on a financial commitment that you can't afford. So, only apply early decision if you really mean it. But keep in mind that the school will work with you and, release you from that commitment if your financial situation changes and they can't meet it. Hopefully, if your financial situation changes, they can provide money at the end to meet that new situation and it'll all be good. But colleges will be reasonable is the short answer.
Thank you for all of that insight. I think that's super helpful. And I saw we had a few questions about overall trajectory. Maybe your GPA wasn't so good, first or second year, but that has increased. Obviously, a lot of students took a pass-fail this past spring or maybe had a lower grade than they otherwise would have, obviously, due to COVID-19 and the stressors that come with that. And I think the right way to say it, Zach said it exactly right, that expanded context. We're considering what's happening, and looking at those applications. I know for us, we have an appeal process. If you need to explain more, oftentimes applications have that built in on the front end as well, right? What do we not know already? What sort of information would you like to provide? So I think always feel free to, and a lot of people are like, should I even try to apply? Yes, always try, always apply. The worst you can get is no. But I think, in addressing last minute too, I know we just have a few minutes, so I'm trying to rapid fire. Regarding questions about scholarships, WUI, SAT, ACT, truthfully just check with the individual institution, at least would be my advice on that. I think, as Gary mentioned, policies are changing, I think hourly right now, it feels. So just reach out to us and we're happy to let you know what's happening. And let's see, I think Aaron's in the chat typing a few answers related to the Common App and some more of those logistic pieces. Does anyone else in the group, is there a question you're seeing that we want to wrap up with here? I know if we didn't get to your question, we're going to post our emails, so please email us if we didn't get to your question. Yes, Manny, do you want to?
Yeah, I liked the one about the confidence or advice for being confident in college interviews and some good questions to ask. I think, like I was mentioning with like college essays or different additives that some schools ask for, I think authenticity plays a big role, right? I think Gary B said it best at the beginning. We're in the work of admissions, not in a rejection, right? So for us, it's not really about setting you up to fail or trying to create or spin a way for those interviews to be negative. We want to welcome you to our institutions, right? We don't exist if students don't come to our schools. And so I think going into it with that mindset, not necessarily overconfidence, right? But going in confident and saying like, hey, like they want me here and I just want to be able to share of myself authentically, wholeheartedly, and be able to have a conversation, maybe get my questions answered. That usually helps pave the way for what questions you want to ask. So when we were sharing earlier about how do you decide between schools, that's always a great time to ask those questions of us, of whoever's doing your interview, like what's going to set them apart for you. And that's usually a good way to kind of parlay that side of it too. But I think sometimes, being someone who hasn't gone through too many job interviews, because Gary mentioned this earlier when we were chatting, like I've only had so many jobs after college, and one of them included the job I'm currently in right now. It's a big thing of practicing too. I actually did like 3 mock interviews before I did my interview at Eastern, and those 3 interviews that I did before definitely helped me out, worked out a lot of kinks, was able to get a lot of support and things that I could do differently, the questions I could ask. So, your parents are there at home, you got older brothers or sisters, even younger brothers and sisters. Sometimes the youngins can be a little bit more honest and blunt with you, but practice some interviews with folks that you have at home. If you can connect with college admissions advisors, we'd be more than happy to do that too. I know I would be happy to do a mock interview with a student if they were interested. And then your high school teachers, counselors, coaches, like utilize the resources you have definitely at your disposal.
Okay, so we've got about 4 minutes. Do we want to, if everyone wants to go around and provide, maybe one piece of advice to wrap up here? I'll start. I think it's been, reiterated a bit at this point, but I think truthfully apply to the institutions that you're interested in, and cost is a factor, location is a factor, consider all those fit pieces that Gary mentioned. But it's certainly worth applying. Fill out the FAFSA. You never know if you don't try, as Zach said, but at the same time, there are a lot of, like myself, I'm a large publicly funded institution, and oftentimes there aren't the resources to meet all the need in the world that we wish that we absolutely could. But it's always worth applying, asking, connect with your admission counselor. And I think really consider, long-term, right? If you're looking at grad school, med school, how many loans are you taking out for your first 4 years, right? And then looking down the road, I think, those aren't the most fun conversations to have, but I think it's important to be realistic, and that financial fit piece, I think, is huge. So whoever wants to take it next.
I'll jump in. Thanks, Brittany. I guess the advice I want to close with is maybe the most obvious but most important. Even with COVID, before, after, and during COVID, the anchor of your admissions application is going to be your transcript. The most important thing you can do is earn strong grades in challenging classes at whatever level you're ready for. A lot of attention goes on to essays and letters and extracurriculars, and those can be very influential in individual cases, but they all sort of steer the anchor of your application, which is your grades. So there was a question about what about trends? Upward trends can really help. You definitely don't want a downward trend where you have A's in freshman, sophomore year, and then you're getting C's all of a sudden in junior and senior year. Upward trend can offset a tough start, especially places with comprehensive review, but your transcripts are really the most important part. So that's where your first focus should be. And I'll just say, I didn't mention this earlier, but I am based in Washington State, in the greater Seattle area, kind of. I know we're not traveling now, but I will be, when I can, traveling up and down the West Coast and and some neighboring states. And I would, in the Aero area for sure. So I hope to get to meet some of you along the way. Thank you.
We've said it once, I'll say it again, reach out to us. We don't bite. We are here to answer your questions and help you through this application process. We know it can be confusing, it can be overwhelming, and we want to make it as easy for you as possible. So reach out to us, even if we aren't necessarily your territory admissions counselor, reach out to us. Like we've mentioned, a lot of us are doing virtual Zoom visits right now, so you can meet face-to-face with us, answer those questions. Go do our virtual tours so you can get a good feel for campus. I'm sure a lot of schools are doing this. We're doing a lot of social media outreach, so a lot of Ask Me Anythings. A lot of our student workers are doing live tours or talking about their experience at SOU on our admissions page, or on our, Instagram, Facebook Live. And I'm sure many schools are doing that as well. So check out social media, see what's happening when you can't really visit the campuses right now.
Yeah, I definitely want to reiterate. I know I didn't put my email there because I did want students to make sure that they connected with the wonderful group of counselors that we have at Eastern, but I share the same sentiment as Aaron. You know, if you're from not my area, I'm not going to turn you away, right? I'm still going to help answer any questions I can, and then maybe connect you with your admissions advisor of your area, just because we do a lot of text messaging, emailing, a lot of stuff that comes from particular admissions advisors, so we want you to get to know who they are. So you can book virtual one-on-ones with us, email us, text us, call us, and that website that's on there is the quickest way, easiest way to find out who your advisor is, and we're definitely happy to answer any of your questions coming into the next school year.
Gary, do you want to take us home? Any advice, lasting words?
Students, families, ask questions, follow directions, reach out to us. We're happy to discuss our obsession with this profession. Let us know. We'll help you. Thanks for being part of Aero.
Thank you everyone so much for joining us. We'll stick around for one more minute in case you have any burning questions, but you have all of our emails. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you all for joining us.
Hope